Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Life is Strange. Life is Strange is at its core a storytelling game, a narrative game, and so because of that, I do recommend being aware of spoilers, possibly in the video aspect of this review. I'll try not to include anything like too spoilery, but I'm not really sure how I include video for this game without spoiling some kind of dialogue or narrative. So maybe just listen to the review or possibly play the game first and then come back to the review. So it's kind of like a visual novel. There's a little more to it than just churning through the pages and things. It's kind of like one of those choose your own adventure type of games where how you interact with the people around you and the world around you can have certain outcomes. I've only played through this game once, so I'm not sure like how much could possibly be different. However, I still felt like I was kind of being shoehorned in a certain direction. So I don't feel like I could affect the outcome too much besides like maybe the final decision I have to make at the very end of the game. There are like some minor things that I feel like I can potentially affect here, but as far as like the overall plot goes, it does feel like there is a straight and narrow path. In this game, you play as 18-year-old Max Caulfield, who attends an art academy, and she is an aspiring photographer using her instant camera. At the very beginning of the game, so this isn't too much of a spoiler, it happens within like the first 10 minutes of the game, she is in the girl's bathroom and some crazy psycho guy comes in, followed by a different girl, and long story short, the guy ends up shooting the girl. And this is where Max Caulfield finds out that she has the ability to rewind time and change the potential future, thus creating like different timelines. This rewind time mechanic definitely comes in handy for the remainder of the game because if you interact with someone or something a certain way and you didn't like the way that it turned out, you are welcome to rewind and try again and see if you like the other outcome better. This also is very handy with some light puzzle solutions. Typically, you are trying to like interact with the environment around you, and let's say you're trying to get behind a locked door. Potentially, you could bust that doorknob, get in, rewind time, and then the door will be locked again because Max and any items that she is carrying still remain with her, but the world around her will rewind. And so none of the puzzles were like too difficult. I only needed to look up maybe like one or two solutions, and that's just because I had to like find the code or something and I couldn't find where the code was. But they do some interesting puzzles here with her rewind ability. This game is pretty mature, and as you can imagine, with a bunch of teenagers around, it does have a lot of swearing and some very adult themes here, so definitely not for some of the younger audiences. Some of the dialogue here doesn't really sound natural or organic to me. Let's see, this game came out in 2015, and so I was probably 24 at the time or 25, and the characters in this game are 18, so I wasn't like too much older than the characters in this game, and I would never talk like how a lot of these characters would talk. Like the word hella gets thrown around a lot, and I'm just like, I don't think teenagers ever really use that word. And there's just like other things that might be considered a little cringy or unrealistic. Some of the voice actors were really good. Like I thought the voice actor for Max herself was a very good voice actor along with her friend Chloe. But some of the side characters, the voice actors sounded like they were laying it on a bit thick and it didn't sound natural or organic that way. And since for the majority of this game, you are interacting with other people and talking with them, this is more of an issue than it normally would be in a video game. I know that this game got a facelift not too long ago. It's some kind of remaster, remake type of deal here. I played the original version, and the character models have not aged the best. They're kind of in that uncanny valley where they look too realistic to be cartoony, but not realistic enough to look normal, and so it's just kind of off. And just how what the character models are doing when they're talking with each other, they just like look off in random directions, or sometimes their like eye will poke through their eyelid. They're very wobbly and moving when they're talking, where they're just kind of like leaning back and forth in a not so realistic way. And so this game definitely needed some kind of remaster remake. So if you're interested at all in this game, I definitely recommend looking at the newer version of this. In addition to interacting with the people around you, you're also interacting with the world around you. And this takes place in Arcadia Bay, which is in Oregon. So as you can imagine, there's lots of like pine trees everywhere, and you're near the ocean, and there's lots of like animals scurrying about. If this was real life, like if this was real life footage, it would be very, very beautiful. And in some ways, they have a certain art style to this game where it's almost kind of water painting, watercolored, where sometimes this game actually can achieve that really beautiful appearance, despite some of the visual glitches that may occur. Max is a really big snoop, or at least I was when I was controlling Max, but in order to progress through the story and get the results that I wanted to, you kind of need to do a lot of snooping. So oftentimes you'll be like hanging out with somebody in their room and they'll ask you to, hey, go put on some music. And so you kind of have like free reign of their room. And so there's like all these objects that you can either look at, and then Max will give you her own little interpersonal thoughts on the object itself, or interact with it in some way. And so really, like, while the person is waiting for me to put on music, I'm just snooping through their drawers, looking through their stuff, peeping under their bed to see if there's any items of interest there. And there's not really like any repercussions in that way, at least as far as I found. Most of the stuff that you can look at or interact with is just kind of like world building, where Max will just say, sometimes she says something like, oh, I remember playing with this as a kid, or just like her thoughts on the diner that you're at, or the song that's playing. But every once in a while you do get an item that can potentially affect something later on, that maybe there's like an item that you can pick up and it will come up later. And so it kind of is, if you want like the best possible outcome in this game, it is in your best interest to like interact with every single object in the environment that you're in. I didn't necessarily do that. I didn't like look at every single item, but if I noticed that I could interact with the item in some way, then I would definitely do that. If you're like snooping through somebody's room that you don't want to leave evidence that you were in their room, usually I would try to like rewind to hide any kind of disturbances that I made. I don't know if that made a potential difference or not, however. It is in your best interest though to snoop all over the place, interact with everything, talk to everybody, because there are these overall mysteries that you're trying to figure out. One of the biggest things that you're trying to understand is right when Max discovers that she has the ability to rewind time, she also has a vision in the future of a giant tornado destroying Arcadia Bay. And so you're trying to figure out what that's all about. There's a lot of teenage drama that you're trying to understand. I'm trying to be like vague on purpose because I don't want to spoil too much here. You're going to get a lot of text messages too, in which like you don't get to choose how Max responds to the text messages. She'll just text message back immediately. I'm not sure if looking at your text messages or not has any outcome in the story, or if it's still just more world building, but I always opened up my phone whenever I did get a text message. Whenever you do something that could potentially affect the story in some way or another, you'll get this little notification that says like, this action will have consequences. And so that's when you really need to stop and consider, do I want to rewind and try that interaction again, or am I happy with the way that this thing turned out? Obviously, not every choice that you make you're going to feel good with. Oftentimes you're given either 2 or 3 choices, and none of them are optimal, unless perhaps you set everything up perfectly the way that you wanted to. But sometimes you are stuck between a rock and a hard place, and you kind of have to choose the lesser of 2 evils, at least with the information that you have. This game is broken up by chapters. There are 5 chapters in total, or I think they might call them episodes. And at the end of each episode, you kind of get a percentage showing your choices compared to everybody else who has played this game. And so if you have the choice to open the window for the bird, it will show you open up the window for the bird, and 42% of other players did that. Therefore, 58 of players did not do that. Oftentimes I was with the majority here. I was surprised to see how split evenly some choices were when it was so obvious to me, at least, which one was the right choice in my mind. Sometimes for some of the more minor choices, I didn't even know that was an option. And so you'll see like, you did not get an invitation to the Vortex Club. And I'm like, when was I ever having the opportunity to get invited to the Vortex Club? And so that's where it would be in your best interest if you want to like experience this game fully, to interact with every person, every object whenever you have the ability to do so. But some of these choices, I'm like, that doesn't even really matter. That's not gonna affect anything. And oftentimes it doesn't. Like if I chose to water my plant or not, if my plant died or lived, like really, that I feel like that didn't ever really come up in the future. However, there are some minor cases where I'm like, ooh, I'm glad I did that. Overall, how the game ended up, I am pretty satisfied with the way that it ended up, and I'm not regretting any of the choices that I made. As far as vibes go, you can imagine the beach, Oregon kind of vibes. Max Caulfield is a very nerdy, kind of hipster type of person, which was very, very popular in the mid-2010s. And the music was matching those vibes beat for beat, where some of the songs were very popular about a decade ago. And they're still pretty good songs, you know? I like the soundtrack, and they actually use licensed songs a lot with actual vocals too. There are times when you're just vibing in a certain area, maybe you're at a park and you just sit on the bench. Max will kind of go through what she's thinking about in her head while the music is playing, and then they'll just cycle between all these cinematic shots of Max as she's laying in bed or sitting on the bench, and you're just listening to the music if you just want to kind of vibe out and enjoy the scenery. It's not too long of a game. Maybe it took me 12 hours if I was to guess, because it's like broken up by episodes, and I kind of like that it was, because I could just like every day I'm going to watch the next episode or play through the next episode. And I did get pretty invested in the story. I was really worried that the payoff would not pay off, but in some ways it did, in some ways it doesn't. It does leave something up to your own interpretation where you just kind of have to guess why this thing happened. Most of the other stuff did resolve in a satisfying way. I liked Max as a character. I liked her friend Chloe to a lesser extent, but I wasn't like annoyed by her or anything. I don't typically play these kind of choose your own adventure games, so it was nice kind of dipping my toes in the genre, and I just overall came out of the experience as a positive one. And so I think I'm going to give this game a 4 out of 5. I still think that the remastered version of this game is probably the way to go, because the immersion breaking of the visuals was pretty severe. But if you can get past like some of the outdated dialogue and the visuals, I do think that you will have a fun time with this game. Well guys, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Life is Strange, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!
Aw, check it. We're gonna destroy some rails for you. What do you want to see?
Go for a tree flip.
Let's get Trevor all over that action. Oh, ow. Ooh.